Welcome to the Future of Surrogacy, the podcast that explores the people, the innovations, and the ideas building the next generation of surrogacy. In this episode, we're diving into where technology belongs in surrogacy and where it doesn't, and we'll explore how it's helping, where it's hurting, and the very real risks and rewards agencies face as they adopt new tools. So if you are a surrogacy professional wondering what the next wave of innovation will mean for your agency, this conversation is one you don't want to miss. Our guest today sits right at the crossroads of that tension. Jim Vandagrift is the COO of Heart to Hands Surrogacy, the full-service agency based in Oregon. And for those who don't already know, Jim is married to Adrienne Black, who is the founder of Heart to Hands and herself a 4-time surrogate. At Heart to Hands, Jim wears many hats: operations leader, escrow manager, surrogate supporter, diaper changer, and in his spare time, fly fisherman, tango dancer, and sailor. But here's what makes Jim's story especially fascinating. 7 years into his employment at Heart to Hands, he co-founded a medical records company that was ultimately acquired by Gather, part of the SeedTrust family of companies. That gives him a front row seat into how technology can transform sensitive, human-centered industries and also how it can fall short if not done right. So with that, welcome to the Future of Surrogacy, Jim.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Great. So why don't we get into, let's start with a little bit of your background and how you found yourself in the world of surrogacy.
Well, I met Adrienne Black. Actually, you mentioned tango dancing earlier. I met her at a tango event and she was pregnant and she had twins from a surrogacy at that time. And that was the first time I've ever heard of surrogacy.
I'm just curious, do you remember what you thought?
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. A lot of people, the first question they'll ask us is like, how much are you getting paid or that sort of thing. And I was like, that's really neat. You're helping a family. Like for me, it was all focused around some very unusual people are doing that helps people grow family and build that joy that they have with children and family.
So how long has it been since you've been in this world?
Ooh. So
When was that tango dance?
15 years ago.
Oh yeah, okay. So you've
Yeah.
seen a lot of changes, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was with Adrienne for her last 2 surrogacies. So seeing all that and then going through and starting the agency. And then when I came on 2 or 3 years after it started, um, getting really more involved in it. So
Yeah. And I know when we spoke to you a few weeks ago, well, let me back up. We talked to a lot of agencies and I don't mean any offense to any surrogacy agencies out there, but a lot of people don't ask technical questions. And so we were talking to you and you were asking all these technical questions. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? What is your background? And so I knew that you had a deeper knowledge or a deeper understanding of technology than most people that we run into in surrogacy. And so that's why I was so excited to do this podcast with you, because I'm curious. So you've been in it for 15 years and I'm wondering, where do you see technology helping the most in surrogacy? And then I'm going to ask you kind of the same thing in terms of where is it hurting? And this could be anything from intake in medical records and journey management.
I think surrogacy is benefiting from a lot of the screening processes, like it's speeding the screening processes up with the technology, which isn't a bad thing necessarily if it's done right. Sometimes we're waiting a long time for different things, like medical records that used to take 20, 30 days, maybe longer to get in the house, sometimes even longer if you've got one person that's doing multiple jobs and can't keep up on those. I think what I've seen in the last 10 years since I've been doing this is within the surrogacy industry, when we first started, we adopted a lot of technology that was kind of what we thought was basic, CRM type things, management, storage of our stuff on Google Drive.
Yeah.
When we were talking to other professionals in our industry, they were not doing those things. They were still using paper files. They were like, how are you chatting with your team? You guys are all remote. I was like, we got a great service called Basecamp. Like we have things that we use that bring us together and manage our systems externally for our clients, but also internally in a way that speeds things up, creates better communication, and that ultimately serves the client in the end better.
Yeah. So are you still using Basecamp? I'm so curious.
We are. We have not found a replacement for Basecamp. We've looked at everyone's using Slack or different things like that. And they all are missing some components that Basecamp has that makes it well worth about the money. The communication internally and specifically to this client and that client, and not just a client, but within it, there are the breakdowns of like, if we're talking about escrow, are we talking about case management? What are we talking about here? And we can have all those notes and those conversations within those realms. So everyone can go back and look. We can keep record if we ever need record for unfortunate things in the future that happen that sometimes they come back on you. We have records of what we've done and what we've said and how we've treated our clients as well as our internal team as well. All that's in there. And then looking forward, we can take that data and go, how do we do better? This is
Yeah.
what we quite often when something goes a little sideways, we go through and we do an audit and go, what happened here? Can we improve our systems? Can we improve what we're doing as a team? And when that happens, that's really cool.
One of the things that I see all the time, and I know I'm gonna ask you the question in terms of where tech is falling short, so this might be part of your answer for that one. But one of the patterns that we see is this kind of patchwork system from agencies. So they'll be doing, some form of kind of outbound marketing, and whether that's performance marketing on Meta, so they kind of have that system and that dashboard over there. And then once a surrogate candidate comes in, then they'll kind of enter their CRM realm, and maybe that CRM realm has notifications, or maybe it has email integrated into the CRM. But if not, then they have another system that is managing email campaigns for people. And they have DocuSign in another one. And so I'm just like, you said Basecamp. Is Basecamp like the, mecca for?
Basically, it's not. No, we have the same issue.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that I think tech can make a big difference in. If they can come in and conglomerate everything we do into one dashboard, one place, we end up putting data in. I think now we're down to 3 places. It used to be
That's
4. So for
good
every client.
comparatively.
So, and we're doing some changes now that'll bring it down to 2 places. So reducing that extra busy work for our team. That's out of all the things we do with surrogacy, like who wants to do busy work and put repetitive information in, even with APIs and different types of data over, not all systems play together, even when
Yeah.
they say they do. We go in and it says, yeah, we have API, but when you play with this one, it doesn't actually have all the connectors to connect the right data.
Yeah.
So that's been an issue. So we've just settled on using several different systems and they work, but they do cost more time for our team, which just means less time they can spend helping and supporting our clients.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in almost every major industry, and I've never seen an industry that is the amount that lives in surrogacy people's brains, like the agency workers' brains in terms of task.
We have on our workflow on the surrogate side, I believe we have over 300 tasks in the workflow.
Yeah,
That's from
believe
start
it.
to finish. That's from day one when they come in the door to, when they're done with their contract and they've all healed up and they're finished their whole journey.
So it doesn't have to live in your team members' heads.
Yeah. So having that written down, that creates less errors, less issues that you might run into where a team member forgot they were supposed to do something, or they just skipped a step because it didn't seem important. We trust our team, but we also want their main focus really should be on the care of the clients
Yeah,
and not like, did you do this little thing over here? And there's lots of that has to be done, lots of moving parts. But in the end, we want them to focus on that heart-centered client care. But you still have to run the business and make sure things are going, are you going to get to this appointment? Did you do this check mark off of here? Like there's all these different things as we go through the surrogacy journey that there's just so many. I don't know how agencies without that system memorialize the workflow. So when someone comes in, you have to train them from like ground up and it's sort of like there's no guidelines for them. So you
no,
have to almost have someone with them all the time, or they're just going to make a lot of mistakes.
yeah,
Which, when you have a population of people that have been through a lot of trauma, like we want them to feel confident and secure and trusting. So the more mistakes you make as an agency, the more that erodes that. So we try to avoid that by creating a workflow that kind of encompass almost anything we can run into. And as we run into new things, we add them in. And
yeah.
then the trick is managing that so it doesn't become overwhelming and that it can be done in a way that seems streamlined and fairly linear because surrogacy is not linear all the time. You think it might be, but it's not.
Yeah, I know. I hear that from a lot of agencies too. Okay, so on the plus side of technology, I'm hearing team collaboration, helping set expectations with surrogates and or IPs, speed, maybe that we could, like what used to take a long time doesn't take as long anymore so that's great. All things on the good puppies and rainbows side of technology. But what about more on the kind of the prickly side of technology? Where are you seeing it being used wrong or poorly or unsafely?
Well, I think the number one thing is to make sure that we're all being human and we're presenting that way and we're engaging with our clients that way. And when you see apps that are like swipe right for your surrogate, that's where I
Yeah,
get kind of cringy. And from what I've seen, those don't work in the end. Our population right now doesn't accept that. And they do in dating now, right? And different things. But in surrogacy, that just doesn't work the same. There's so many things you need to know before you swipe right for surrogacy compared to like a date.
right.
And you don't want to get people's hearts and minds invested in a surrogate and then the matching criteria isn't quite right because the data in the system and the platform wasn't correct,
Yeah.
or whatever kind of faux pas might be there, but it's gonna have an effect on your clients and on the surrogate. Everyone has feelings in this, and everyone feels something. They're excited about that. Ooh, someone swiped right on me. I'm excited, and the IP is excited. And then you find out that there's, let's say they won't terminate for a certain thing.
Right.
It wasn't a yes or no. It wasn't a solid question. So you have these things that are gray areas that really need to be thought about and looked at before you put two people together and say, would you like to be a match?
Yeah, that's such a great answer. And I
Yeah,
could
I think they did the matching stuff. That's one of the most cringy things we've seen out there, and they just don't. They're just not accepted, and I can see why.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more too, and I think that's the number one concern. I mean, because 'cause we're obviously AI in surrogacy, and so, like, that gets some natural pushback, and rightly so, because agency owners are concerned. This is such an intimate human journey. How are you supposed to use AI in the right way? Or can you even use AI in the right way? And, of course, we're biased with that answer, but yeah, I agree. Well, let's dive into the medical record side of the house because I'm really curious about your experience there. So, okay, so take us back to when you were like, you know what? Because you had been working at Heart to Hands, right? And
Yep.
so, did you see a problem that you were like, I'm going to go try to solve this, or how did it come to?
We internally had solved the problem. We
Okay,
had figured out a system that we were getting medical records returned within kind of the average of 4 weeks, which is pretty quick at the time. So we had a system going. It was working pretty well. We don't hoard everything. We tend to share a lot of what we do and how we do it. There's some things that we do keep as secret sauce, but how you collect medical records is not secret sauce. And then, so this is going on, and we've been doing that for 2 or 3 years, that system. And on the professionals group, the surrogacy professionals group, where
yeah.
there's like 1,700 professionals in there, I started seeing a lot of people asking about who collects records? How can we get this done? So I took that initiative, and I'd been thinking about doing it for about a year before I started seeing more things. And I was like, I could probably make another business here and help the industry, speed up that part of screening that doesn't
Wait,
need to be
just
slow.
before you continue, did you have any kind of background in health?
Zero,
Okay, I love
zero,
it. Okay, keep going.
zero background in health. And yeah, so I sat down and I built out the whole company in about 8 weeks, ready to go and launch. Did some soft launch. We had some initial agencies and as well as Heart to Hands. We did a soft launch. We tested it for a while, and then we found the bugs in it and changed some things. And then we went ahead and launched it for the general public.
And so what was it? Technology that would just reach out to the clinics or the
It
medical?
was it was a mix of tech. It was kind of low tech, and it needed more tech, and that's a different story we can talk about in a minute. But
Okay.
the amount of staff hours it takes to collect records, and we would do a review on them to make sure there was no giant red flags according to ASRM standards. It was just like, hey, these are some things that came up. And there was 5 basic categories at the time. And so the tech part of it was really more about interfacing with the clients and making it easy for them. And we were using at the time for this system, we used Monday. It
Yeah.
worked really well. I really liked it for organizing clients. Without that, the way you would continue to contact the clinics on a regular basis and keep track of things is really, really hard. So with a nice setup on Monday.com, we were able to track each client, each pregnancy, and differentiate between the OB side of things and the actual birth, the labor records.
Yeah.
So because you're collecting kind of two different things sometimes. Sometimes you can get the OB records from the hospital where they birthed that, but sometimes not. So the technology, and we were trying to push the technology as much as we could. And we got to a point where we really needed to go in and invest a lot of money to bring tech in. And I just wasn't willing to do that for where I was sitting. We have a great agency, and to invest in that and the amount of time for that return, it just didn't seem like it didn't have the value for me at the time.
Yeah.
But we did get it going and up and running, and I ran it for 9 months and did pretty well. Yeah. And then finally at 9 months, I went ahead and sold the company.
And did you already know the folks at Gather, or did they were
Oh
they?
yeah. Yeah. The folks at the SeedTrust family,
Yeah.
who owns also Orchid, and I think they own a
Yes.
few other things in the
Yes,
industry, but
they do.
some financing. I'm not sure exactly all their and what they encompass, but so I knew Adam and Brock, and I'd already had relationships with them. So I think they were interested in going into the area before I did, but hadn't done it. So it was kind of like opened the door for it.
Was yours named Gather, or did they name it Gather?
I named it Gather.
Okay.
Yeah, I named it Gather. They changed the name slightly.
And then you got to watch it evolve from there. I'm sure you were probably on for a little bit in terms of transition, and you got to see it grow into
Yeah,
something you had dreamed of it. Yes?
yeah. So I was on as assisting as far as advice and kind of, hey, we're running into this, or what'd you do with this, for about a year, and then we currently still use them. So got their record times, collection times down to 14 days,
Yeah, that's
which is
pretty impressive.
half of what we were doing before. And part of that is the tech they put in. So they went in ahead and spent the money on tech and a nice interface. You come in, it's easy, it's quick, it's low friction for the agency, but
Yeah.
also not. You also have to walk that line with the surrogate, trusting the agency, but maybe not trusting Gather. So
Right.
you got a couple little things to worry about in there as far as trust, because we are talking about some sensitive data, and not just data, but if I think one of the other kind of interesting components to Gather for me was that I was also an agency, perceived as an agency owner. I don't own Heart to Hands, but working as a COO,
Yeah.
people were like, "Are you just going to take our surrogates, deny them, and then just bring them into your own agency?" Like, there's things,
Yes.
yeah, there's a lot of trust in there, and I had built up a lot of trust in the industry, and we didn't steal any surrogates the whole time.
Yeah, of course not.
We did not, never an intent. I just wanted to help other agencies out, because really, as Heart to Hand Surrogacy, we can't help everybody that needs help.
Of course not. No. But so are you hip to what some of the other services? And I obviously like we can keep this in the podcast or take it.
I am.
You watching like the Myanmars and the Myteras or the now I think Myanmar just rebranded to Predoc. But
Yeah. So Myanmar is more, when we talk with Myanmar, there's some outliers in there. One of the things that becomes an issue when collecting, and this will change as time goes on, is records in small offices, or let's say you had a midwife and
yeah,
she's retired and all her records are in a mini storage unit in
right.
another town that she goes
Yeah.
to once a month.
How do you
So
handle that?
so if you're trying to do tech like Myanmar or whatever they call themselves now, if
Predoc.
you
Yeah.
pre-doc, the problem is those little corners that might be really important. There might be a serious issue with birth in one of those records that could cause a death, or that could cause a serious complication, and that would be missing. So still, with the automated collection of records that they're doing, they're still missing those little bits and pieces. But I think they get probably 80%. But
Yeah.
you got to know, you don't know when you're getting 80% or not. That's kind of what you got to know, when you're getting all the records and all the pieces.
I'm
And
curious about this too. And I don't know enough about medical records yet to ask this question in a smart way. So I'll just ask
Mhm.
it. So, what I'm hearing a lot from agencies is they'll gather records and they'll do a preliminary passover. Again, like you said, like no major red flags. But then the clinics then do another deeper dive. And so, but they're not using the same tools. Like,
Yeah,
what are
and
they?
sometimes they won't look at the summaries either. The clinics aren't going to trust anybody but their internal systems as far as record
Okay.
reviews, which I get that. Like, you don't want to rely on some other service that maybe works. Maybe their employee had a bad day and missed this record piece and did put it in here. Like, you want to make sure that those records are accurately interpreted and that they're complete. And if you're not looking at them and going, "Oh, there's a gap here I can see because I just looked through this," I think sometimes the clinics do two more reviews. I think when we first send a surrogate over for review, they do a medical records clearance, an okay on that. And then when they're in person, and that's a different person than maybe the actual doctor. And then for the in person, I think they also sometimes have another look at the records as the doctors. As an agency, we will look at the summary. And if we see something that we don't like or we think might be an issue, we'll go back and look at the records as well. So you can have up to 4 people looking at these record sets, which, if you think at that point, that's a lot of coverage and a lot of, it leaves less room for error, less room for mistakes.
And then, but are the clinics pulling their medical records? They're not pulling them from Gather.
They're not. They're trusting the records that they receive, and depending on the clinic, they'll want more complete records, and sometimes they don't. If we do have complete records, some clinics will have the intended parents sign a waiver acknowledging that all the records were here.
Mhm.
So there are some ways where, if you don't have all the records, you still can have a surrogate go through and have a successful surrogacy.
Yeah.
So those
Uh,
record sets get sent over to the clinic along with the introduction of the surrogate, and then they do their own reviews based off the records we've collected.
so it makes the records that you are pulling even more essential because those are the ones that the clinic is going to be doing the eval on too.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a really essential service to be providing. And I'm guessing this is where you can see some kind of surrogacy agencies cheating if they're not being thorough, or they can mislead, or can they, because a clinic will be like, these records aren't good.
We They could redact. Well, I guess an agency could redact. and
Okay.
you wouldn't know necessarily. I mean, if you look at a record set, they usually say page one of like 200 or 400, whatever, however many pages. So if you see there's a inconsistency in the pages, you might notice that. But if you get a small record set and it's just not missing completely, like if they had a miscarriage, it was just a scenario where they've got it in a set, that may be able to be removed. So yeah, there is room there for that.
And then how are these being handed to the clinic too? Because how could somebody redact it if is it like a PDF that's being sent over or like, oh,
They're
okay.
they're all digital PDFs typically, and then so
Yeah.
you can come in and doctor anything. This is the problem as we get in deeper with AI.
Yeah.
All that's harder to detect. You can recreate anything you want.
Yeah.
So those chains of trust need to be in place as we move forward with technology.
Yeah, like the integrity of that data has to
Mm.
be verified. That's really interesting. And that is a great opportunity for technology to make it a better process.
And
So that is something that we got to get that figured out in this industry because that's too important to be a potential risk factor. Okay, so is there anything that you're seeing in terms of where technology is going that you're excited about? And you can be cautiously excited, but is there anything that you're, whether it's on the automation side or communication side, anything that you're like, ooh, I'm curious to see where this goes?
I'm always cautiously excited about tech.
Yeah.
Um, but one of the main things I'm excited about is medical in general. I think with AI is able to look at, like I saw a study the other day where it can see pictures of a face and with 80 or 90% accuracy, tell if you're going to have Parkinson's from your smile.
Wow.
So if you take that and you take it into any of the medical roles, where you take it into, like, let's say a surrogate, and they look at all their records, they look at all the things that they look at. AI might have a different perspective and be able to pull different things together to give you, clinics would probably use this more than anyone and kind of approve that surrogate on a different view than we've typically looked at, or a more in depth and more inclusive view. I don't know how you keep all those data points as a provider in your head when you're making that decision. AI knows everything pretty much it has in its basket at once. It knows it's all there. It doesn't ignore any of it. You can look at it. You can ask the questions about it. So I think that part of medical for screening, I think for processes like they're looking at, I don't know the study, but I saw an article the other day talking about taking the embryos and looking back at the cytoblast and studying the ones that made it and then
Yeah.
making determinations based off that and increasing the success rates of transfers. So there's all kinds of cool things happening. Where it's going to land, who knows? Like, is it going to take most of our jobs? Is it not? All I know is that you still have to have a human involved. I think technology must support and serve the relationship. And I think
Yeah.
that's important. Yes.
Yeah.
So without that, you start to lose that personal connection. And for us as an agency, one of the main things we focus on is the story of this creation is as important as any other part. Meaning that when you match a surrogate with an intended parent, we're not just looking at like the data points. We're looking at personality. We're looking at what they like. What colors do you like? What movies do you watch? Are you into anime? Are you into like Star Wars? That stuff makes those relationships more special. They really bring out this thing that becomes more than just, it turns into a family that's not just another child to those IPs, but now you have auntie that was the surrogate, or,
Yeah.
whatever you want to think of yourselves. So I think keeping that peace is super important. I think without that, it comes too transactional for me at least.
I know, and that's what gives us all an upset stomach when you think about family building as transaction. It's what makes it gross versus what can make it beautiful is what you're talking about, the relationships. We can agree more. Like our point of view, and it's a little bit contrarian because we're an AI technology company, but the idea is like, you know what? AI is really bad at making decisions. AI is phenomenal at gathering information and synthesizing
Hmm.
information, but you need a human to make those final decisions on especially these journeys that are so intimate.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So you talked about Basecamp in terms of journey management and collaboration with your team. You talked about Gather for medical records. I know escrow manager is one of the hats that you wear. And so I was just curious, because that's the other thing that we hear is on the
Mhm.
financial side, it's a little bit scary with that escrow company that stole everybody's
So
money.
yeah, yeah. So we recommend three different escrow services.
Oh, okay.
And I have vetted those personally. So basically, I made a Google form with about, I think, it had 20 questions. It was a lot of questions on it. And so when we present the client with their escrow choices, it has those data points as well. So they know how much insurance they have for which situation, who's on staff. Do they have an attorney on staff? Do they have a financial guy on staff? And so there's some we trust more than others, but overall, yeah, you mentioned SEAM, and We did use her. We had one client with her, and not very many clients chose to work with Seam. And that person seemed so trustworthy, but we didn't have the data, right? We didn't have the receipts. So we're always improving our systems, and we see something go wrong, whether it's in our system or somewhere else. We look at what we're doing and say, how can we improve this? How can we stop
Yeah.
at least our intended parents from having that heartbreak? And luckily, the one person we had, they finished their journey, and it wasn't a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, and they'd already had a baby in their arms. So
Outside of the escrow piece of it, are there other financial tools, maybe being able to access funds, loans, or anything like that you see in terms of?
yeah, I think as the clientele that you serve dictates that. So if you serve, I'll say higher end or a clientele that has more available cash, then they don't need or even want those services, right? They're just gonna pay for it. If you serve a clientele that is to make surrogacy happen, they need a bridge of some sort. Maybe they don't want a second mortgage or house because that's scary.
Yeah.
So if they have some of those services where you can get loans, yeah, we don't use them though. We don't recommend. I wouldn't say we don't recommend them. We don't have a system where we're saying here to our clients, let's use these. We just don't have clients asking for that very often.
Yeah. So the last question around technology is, what about regulation in
Mm,
this space and the ability to use technology for that?
well, in this space in general, there's no regulation over our industry, which is fascinating. We
Yeah.
call it the Wild West quite often, right? And you see it. Things go sideways. People get hurt. People lose money. We've seen agencies fold with intake money as well. So without those regulations, you see a lot of this happening. So I think eventually
Mhm.
regulation will have to come in, especially as we get big stories like Seam. That was a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's not what we've ever seen anything like that before on that scale.
Yeah.
So we see more of this. We see the Mark Surrogacy thing going on. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a big deal and terrible. And that's, I'm not one for regulation necessarily, but when you start to see these things go down and you're like, how can we prevent that? And as just an agency, you can't prevent that.
Well, I have a
And
question about that because I think agencies, and then this is, I'm not pitching or catching,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
in terms of like, I see the only way to prevent those kinds of things happening is with more transparency and more collective data sharing.
Yes, yes. But
But
then you have less checks and balances between places. So let's say the agency and the clinic are one.
yeah,
So the clinic knows the agency is being the person they want them to be.
yeah,
But when those are separate, you don't know. But once they're together, you also create a system where if something is going nefarious down, nobody knows.
right.
So the more you conglomerate things, the more they can stay internal and the more they can do things that hurt people. Like that's the thing with the agencies that hold escrow that we've had in Oregon here. I think three that have went under or just disappear with a bunch of money. It was like 1 million or less. It wasn't like the 15 million or whatever SEMA is doing, but it's definitely an issue that we don't really have a clear answer for. We have guidelines and standards with seeds, but they don't really have any teeth outside the organization, right? You're
Yeah,
just out. And most of those places aren't in anyways because they're not acting ethically. At least some aren't. There's a few in there still.
yeah.
So
I was
I
talking
don't know what the regulations. That's a hard one. I don't know how you'd come in and regulate it in a way. It's I don't know what that would do. Is that
I
going to
was
restrict access to people that couldn't afford surrogacy and they did it some way that was a little less, like let's say independent journey,
right.
and maybe that becomes illegal, or I don't know. Like, what's the regulation going to do to change the scenario for so many people? It's
Yeah.
a double edged sword.
I was talking to an agency owner yesterday, and I won't say his name, but he's very adamant about the need to have some kind of data sharing amongst agencies and attorneys for attorneys that are helping manage independent journeys in terms of who is the surrogate, who are the IPs, where is the embryo coming from, who are they using for escrow, some universal data points that anybody that is helping manage a surrogacy journey would have to report to somebody. And Seeds was the collective winner in terms of who would report to it. But then, and what happens with that information? And then, do they have teeth, like you said?
You have teeth and the people to handle this sorts of thing. That's a volunteer organization, I think, with one paid employee. So
Yeah,
when you start bringing the volume of things to them like that, it's just all volunteers, and we're all trying to run our own businesses and do things,
of course.
and you're like, I'm already working 50, 60 hours, and now you want me to do 5 or 10 more hours this week on this, which
Yeah.
if we can, that's great. But overall, that's, it makes it hard to have a life outside of
Totally.
surrogacy.
And unless everybody's using the same platform, which is also, like people, yeah, it's that
I
makes
think connecting is interesting. There are within the surrogacy world, there are groups of agencies I know that do talk with each other and be like, "Hey, I just had this surrogate, and this happened." Things that would have disqualified her up front. So we start passing that information around. We'll talk about data that's not private or personal, but things that, you might want to watch out for them. And we're not sharing data, but we are sharing like red flags, like watch out for this.
yeah.
Because we don't have that giant collaboration. We do a lot of that internally, but yeah, I think that the problem is like we have an employee and all she does is she's our social media. She's not marketing. She looks for drama and issues, and like maybe the surrogate came to us, but then they were in three other places and they all had bad experiences. So before we invest time, money, and get the IPs all invested in them, we can take that advice and go, well, maybe we don't want to work with you.
Yeah. There's something there for technology to see if it can't be kind of a universal factor.
Yeah, I think if you can get background checks and social checks on surrogates, and I think on the social check, if AI can get in deep enough, you can get a better picture of that surrogate, who she is, and not just what she put on her forms and what she put on
Exactly.
her things, right? So, for example, we had a surrogate that, we ask if you smoke, if you do drugs, all those typical, very basic things. And I went on her Facebook that was open, and I saw her on the front porch smoking a cigarette while her husband was digging a hole in the yard. I was like, and it was posted a week before. I was like, okay. So even
Horrible.
yeah, so you get those sorts of things, and so what happens though
Yeah.
is if she's denied here, there is an agency somewhere that will accept her
Yes.
and they will work with her, and
Yes.
that's the unfortunate part. Even if you put everybody on a list, they'll
Yeah.
just go somebody somewhere else.
Totally.
So that's problematic in that as well. It's not
Yeah.
going to stop it. It's just going to put it underground.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
if you can educate and you can encourage upfront, you might be able to head that off a little bit. So if we
Yeah.
we have someone that isn't quite where we want them, we will, instead of sending them off, like say they have something that maybe where they're at right now not healthy for them to be pregnant, we will encourage them to stay with us and get treatment of whatever they need and be healthy. And if they still want to do surrogacy after that, great. But if you just say no all the time, sometimes they're just going to go somewhere else. They're going to put in applications at however many agencies, and somebody will be looking for that person.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how this industry gets a bad rap.
It does, and I think the lack of, people gets a bad rap because there are some things that happen, but in general, the amount of good things that happen in this industry aren't reported.
And yeah, and it's phenomenal. Like the amount of good that this industry can do, but it's just like
And you
this.
don't want to, and there's so much privacy. Like people don't want to talk about their infertility necessarily and what they had to do to create their family. Some people do, some people don't.
Yeah.
So that's a really big roadblock for having that outward expression.
I saw it too on the adoption side. Adopting families would plaster themselves all over the internet, like we're trying to adopt, we're trying to adopt, and then the minute they adopted, they were like, "No, we are not public anymore." Because, and for a lot of reasons that were like honor the birth family and
Or
that
honor your child as they grow up.
exactly, that's their story, not yours to tell.
So that's a lot of things to navigate. We work in a really complicated field with lots of emotion, lots of privacy issues, lots of heartbreak. I think most of our clients that come to us that have been trying for 10 years to get pregnant, they have PTSD, right?
Oh,
They're traumatized from it. And when you really have to meet clients where they're at, sometimes it's rough. Like the PTSD is so rough that every little thing, every little setback, which they see as a setback, but it might be a normal surrogacy process. Like
yeah,
a failed transfer is not a failure.
no,
It happens, and it's a normal thing.
yeah.
And they might if they've had a lot of trauma, they'll see that as something as a really big deal, and it can send them down into a dark space. So
Yeah. Well, I know. I mean, this is like an honest admission. I'm 15 years post my fertility journey. And when people announce they're pregnant, I still get a little pang in my
a little
stomach.
pain, yeah.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
it's like, that's never going to go away.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, it's it's the thing society tells you as a woman you're supposed to be able to do, and then you can't do it. Like that's hard. And beyond that, that's just the societal thing. And then if you have as a person those maternal feelings and you want to experience that joy of having children and having that kind of family,
yes.
that's heartbreaking. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. Okay. I know we're like getting close to time. So I want to be able to highlight heart to hands.
Okay.
So, because one of the things that came to my mind when I spoke to you is that you don't use paid media because so many agencies are so dependent on paid media to get surrogate candidates in the door. And so, why that choice? What's core to Heart to Hands fundamental beliefs about this process that makes you different?
I think to start with, our founder and leader, Adrian Black, her process around how to build an agency, she started this agency. It was just her, and she only kept it for like 1 to 3 clients a year for 3 to 4 years to learn. Even
Yeah.
though she'd worked 5 years in an adoption law office with an attorney, and
Yeah.
then she was a surrogate, 4 times, she was still wanting to learn how to run an agency because people think it's the same thing.
Right.
So you come in. So what I see it as is building from the inside out. So if you had a globe, we built the core. And
Yeah.
then over the last 14 years, we just slowly add the layers and until you get to the outside. And what the outside looks like is pretty soon you have a good reputation, people trust you, and they're coming to you naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that we don't need to put a sign out and say we're here,
Right.
because we don't push a lot of that paid media that puts you in front of people's faces all the time. But historically, we did try paid media off and on, and it failed miserably. We did it in so many different formats in so many different ways. And we found that at the time, we didn't understand the psychology that
Mhm.
attracts people to this industry. The people we want to work with. We're not looking for surrogates that just are doing it for the money. That's not who we are.
Yeah.
We want people who want to do it to help build families. And the money is certainly important. I've been through this
Yeah.
twice with Adrian, and it just stops your life for a year at least.
Yeah.
And your whole family just stops. And that's the focus for everybody, pretty much. I also think there's inherent distrust of corporations and companies in advertising.
Yes.
We've just really doubled down on that organic building trust with people directly or more in a more direct way, whether that's on Facebook groups, whether that's posts we're doing on social media that are more about learning and education and not so much about use us and make money.
Right.
And there's things you can do that will show who you are as an agency and how you're going to treat your surrogates and your intended parents that don't have to do with all the flashy, like earn X amount of dollars type of thing. We don't run ads like that. We have in the past. They bring in a lot of leads and very few qualified surrogates.
Yeah. Well, I know. I mean, and I can verify. I think from all of the people that we talk to, the Heart to Hands reputation is sterling, and it's an interesting point of view in terms of using an SEO strategy around.
Yeah, I think, and that's kind of been our growing pain as we come from that center core out, because when you're small and you stay away from all the flashiness
Yeah.
and just focus on getting your systems right. I think it takes a while to get to that spot where you gain that trust. And Adrian is always looking at the ethics, always looking at the heartfulness of it
Yeah.
and the transparency. And we look at it really closely for a long time and go, okay, would this make sense and why? So a lot of places will just be like, oh, I want to bring in IPs. They run it like a full business.
Yeah.
And really we balance this thing between business and heart. And that's really hard to do because sometimes we run at very low profit margins.
Yeah.
So sometimes balancing those two things is really a stressful situation sometimes. And it's important. It's really who we are and what we do is to balance that and give the clients the best experience that we can.
Yeah. Because if that is imbalance, that's what leads people down the path of doing unethical things.
Yeah, yeah. And it's very tempting. Like you can see if you hold escrow in-house and you're like, I can't make payroll this week. Well, if I just borrow a little from escrow, I can pay it back next week. Like, so it's not even a person that's an
No.
unethical person, but it's an unethical activity because they kind of have that option that seems attractive and easy. And what else are you going to do?
Yeah.
And so we've never held escrow, and because of those reasons, we're always looking to separate and protect our clients with separate individual services that all can watch out for each other.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant strategy. Yeah. Okay, let's jump to the magic wand because I feel like I've kept you long enough. So, if you had a magic wand, and I'm going to change yours a little bit because you're from the builder side of the house. So, if you had a magic wand and could build one tool tomorrow to transform surrogacy, what would it be?
It would be a tool that combined client-side facing services and internal facing services, and all what we do as a business into one platform. And that's a
Because
lot.
there's
And that would have to tie into the records collection, would
yeah,
tie into the escrow service, would tie into everything, where basically you have a dashboard and you have every bit of data you need to talk to that client, to know what's going on with their case, to make a decision within their case. Like if you have all that in front of you, because the more information you have, the better informed you are, the better decisions you make. So I think if you could have that going on and you need AI in it, because really the amount of data, like I said, we have 300 plus steps in our workflow. The amount of data we collect is huge on each person. And to understand that data and combine it into a system where it makes sense, would need some AI kind of like pulling and understanding and sorting. Another thing we do, which we haven't talked about, is we do psychological surveys on our clients.
Like Myers-Briggs style?
It's similar. It's not Myers-Briggs, but it's something else. I won't say what it is. And then we use that data to as a secondary for matching, not only matching, like we look at it and go, okay, we think they'll be a good match. Let's see what our brains don't know that what AI might know.
Interesting. That's so funny that the company I started prior to this one, we did personality-based matching, and so we did it based on archetypes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's basically two questions. And you pick out all the things that describe you in those two questions, and it spits out this very accurate picture of it. And then I think more important than the matching, when we have a client that is running into some difficulty, frustrated, upset, we can look at that and go, okay, this person likes to be talked to this way. This is how their communication style is.
Yeah.
This is what's going to make them mad. This is what's going to make them feel safe. So we have all that data, and we can
Yeah,
take that to our team, and if our team talks to them, they can actually come to that client with an understanding that probably very few people have that don't know them.
Wow, that's really interesting. Have you ever heard of the company Empathic?
No, I haven't heard of them.
Okay, I'm gonna send it to you. You gotta look it up. My friend Grin Lord started it, and so her business is around. She kind of sits as like an AI interface over any kind of employee communications, and so when people are sending an email to another person in the team, or they're sending it externally to a client, Empathic does a pass because a lot of people be like, "Hey, I need that report," and Empathic will be like, "Hi, how are you?" Like it'll be like, "Hey, these are human to human," but using that kind of filter as with your personality type would be really interesting.
Well, yeah, and where we need to bridge at is we have this data in this set, and it's a very proprietary data, and so
Uh-huh.
we get an actual separate piece of data that we can't directly import into that system. So to
Wow.
have all those, excuse me, to have all those systems together in one place, I think your client experience, because really in the end, whatever data and tech you bring in, you want it to enhance your client experience, not to detract from it. So
Right.
I think something like that, where you have just the ability to look at what's going on in their case,
Yeah.
understand it in a way that, that every employee can understand the same if AI is helping interpret it. Like, did you think about this thing? Did you think about that?
Yes.
They're going to interact like that. And you're like, oh, I hadn't thought about that.
Yes.
That's going to give that client a really good experience compared to like maybe approaching them with with something very succinct when they were very long-winded, or
Well,
vice
this
versa
is like
when you.
what was your quote again? Because this is exactly that.
Yeah, technology must support and serve the relationship.
Yes. Like that is where technology is phenomenal and in terms of synthesizing and analyzing and then helping the humans make the best decisions or take
Well,
the
look at,
next action.
yes, like sleep apps, right?
Yes.
Like, oh, I didn't know I was sleeping poorly. I didn't know that. Like and you can make alterations and changes, but if you don't
Yes.
have data and don't know that something's happening,
Yes.
so if AI can look at your data and go, okay, you've had 400 cases over the last X amount of years. We've looked at all that. And given how this case is going, you probably should do this, because if you don't, you're going to end up with this scenario again. And that didn't work out very well for us. So
Yeah.
I think technology has a lot of place in supporting what we do. And a lot of our clients aren't necessarily first language English speakers either. So
Interesting.
yeah, because it's changing with the new administration. But last year, about half of our clientele were overseas, were non-continental US.
Yeah. Well, that is
So
where I know I'm biased, but hearing you talk, that is the perfect place for AI because the ability to customize pathways and disseminating the same amount of information is like that's
And,
perfect.
and it, like we've got some interesting things going on right now where we're using AI. I'm almost there, building an AI prompt that will. So as an agency, the only way we know how to move forward in a journey is the contract, that GSA contract that
Yeah.
the IPs and the surrogate sign. If you're not understanding what's in that contract, how are you supposed to guide your clients down that road in the way they all agreed upon? So right now we have someone that a good portion of their job is to read through, pull out the contract points that are supposed to be in there. If they're not, what the changes are, all the things that we expected that are in there and things that we don't expect, we pull them out so we know what's going to happen. And we know like, oh, the surrogate's actually not getting paid lost wages. That's who did that? Like, that's not how we went into this contract. And
But
then
you
we
have a
come out of
human
it.
doing that, not AI?
I have a human doing it and we're working on AI. We don't want any mistakes.
Right.
So the AI it's not in every contract. We don't work with the same attorney. So every contract's worded differently. So you're not just looking for the words, we're also looking for, like in my prompt, I look at for the representation of the contract point
Mm-hmm.
is what I use, which is an interesting term for the representation. And that's been pretty well. I would say I got 80%. It's still throwing some weird things in there, but as things happen, I just go in and I use the prompt
Yeah.
to build. I use AI to fix the prompt. Like that's the only way to do it right, is to use AI to build the prompt for AI.
Yeah.
And if there's a problem, you don't try to fix it. You tell AI the problem you're having, give it the data and say, fix this. And it usually does.
Yeah.
So we do one piece at a time. So that's why it's taking me a bit to build it. Plus in between all the things I do time
Of course.
wise.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
If people want to reach out to you, is it okay if I share your contact information in our show notes?
yeah, you can share my email, which is jim@hthsurrogacy.com.
Okay, great. Jim, I don't want to keep you any longer. This has been
Sure.
phenomenal. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing all your technology and historical experience with us.
Thanks, Erin.
Thanks so much for listening to The Future of Surrogacy. If you liked today's episode, send it to a friend or a colleague that should hear it. And be sure to follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn to keep up with new episodes and behind-the-scenes updates. And if there's a topic you want us to cover or someone you think we should talk to, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next time.